All right, we're going to go ahead and get started because I'm sure there's lots to discuss. But before we do, I'd just like to acknowledge that we're here at the Canadian Alliance to End Homelessness Conference taking place on unceded Indigenous lands. And we are on the Ganyagihaga lands and nation, and which is recognized as the custodians of the lands and the waters in which we gather today. Tiohtià:ke, also known as Montreal, is historically known as the gathering place for many First Nations. Today, it's home to a diverse population of Indigenous and other peoples. We respect the continued connections with the past, present, and future in our ongoing relationships with Indigenous and other peoples from coast to coast to coast. So, bienvenue and welcome. It's such a treat for me to be moderating today this particular session. I can see that this is a very popular session. We thought it would be. And we've got some very esteemed guests here that I hope that you'll learn a lot from. Anybody in this room not know Ian, put your hand up. All right, very few hands. Okay, so I'm not going to do the traditional bio because most of us have worked with or know Ian DeYoung from OrCode. If you don't, you will by the end of this session, and you'll want to be a best friend. So I'm going to pass it over to Ian, who's going to take it away. We will have time for Q&A at the end. If we could use the microphone over in this room. Actually, you know what? I might actually just run around with the microphone. The reason that we ask you to use the microphone when you're speaking or asking questions is because this presentation is being recorded. So we want to make sure that you have access to the recording afterwards, but also anybody else that wants to listen. I believe we have a YouTube channel that you'll have access to the presentation to in a few weeks. So thank you so much for your participation. And without further ado, over to Ian.
Well, good morning and happy day 2 of the conference. Is it over yet? It is an absolute pleasure to talk a little bit around mission-driven leadership, but more importantly, to showcase a number of communities and leaders throughout the United States that even with all of what is going on in their country, continue to stay true to the mission of ending homelessness. And you're going to hear a variety of different perspectives that they bring to the table. And one of the reasons why I thought this might be a really advantageous session is we're already seeing some of the tactics that are occurring in the United States being imported into Canada. So we'll get a little bit of a canary in the coal mine sort of perspective, like what are some things to watch out for. And I'm going to introduce each of the panelists in just a few minutes as I kind of go through my slides. It is really important to note that one of our guests, Chris, it is Chris's birthday. And I was thinking we could do something really special in Montreal and sing happy birthday en français. 1, 2, 3. Bonne fête à...
You're going to be fine. You're going to be fine.
Bonne fête à toi. Bonne fête, bonne fête, bonne fête à toi. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Thanks, Ian.
We're going to make sure that each panelist takes 10 minutes or less, and then we're going to have the most time for questions, and we'll also create a space at the end of the session for anybody who's more introverted or neurodivergent who wants to ask their question privately. Right. We'll create some space up at the front at the end for you, or if you need to get contact information, etc. So we'll all make ourselves available at the end. As I go through the first part of what I want to present on today, you're going to see images created in AI. But I want you to know that they were created by people experiencing homelessness around how they would represent themselves using AI. So I just want you to keep that in mind as you go through the images. So if we had to show an image, what would it look like? How would you kind of capture the essence of what we're trying to talk about? So I just wanted that to be clear as we get started. So I'd like to start with a poll. Really simply, how many of you would say that the work keeps getting easier? Okay, follow-up question. How many of you find yourself using more wine, cannabis, or beer in your life these days? That was like, I always love it when some people put up two hands.
I should have.
Right? It used to be hard. That was the pandemic. That was one hand. Now, whoa. So the first thing I want you to know in this space today is that you're not alone. The pressures that you are facing in response to homelessness are not just your program, your organization, your community, that they are being felt throughout the country. And those pressures, we'll see if any of this sounds familiar to anybody, things like criminalization of homelessness or anti-encampment legislation or mechanisms that are put in place to try and force people to use certain services in certain locations is happening in different parts of the country. The demand for shelter services has probably never been greater in many, many, many communities. And yet, shelter providers, rather than us extending our gratitude for them trying to do the best they can with the unprecedented demand they experience, are experiencing lots of critiques relative to how they deliver services. Street outreach providers getting blamed for unsheltered homelessness. Right? You're not doing your jobs, you're not doing it fast enough, you're not doing it good enough. Income assistance rates, no matter which province or territory you live in, woefully inadequate for the cost of housing and all other needs, but let alone the cost of housing. While we remain hopeful that new construction is going to alleviate some of the challenges that we're experiencing, we also know that even modular construction doesn't happen overnight, and these things take time, and so how do we kind of tread water as we're doing that? And I'd note that racism and discrimination is also alive and well. And that that continues to impact many people trying to access housing or other resources to stay housed. So times are heavy. And I think in heavy times is really an important time for us as leaders to make decisions. And the first decision that you have to make is looking deep inside yourself and asking, am I actually interested in ending homelessness? Or am I committed to ending homelessness? Because those are two completely different things. If you're interested in achieving something, you do it when it is convenient. When you're committed to doing something, that's where you put your energy and your resources and your advocacy. When you're committed to doing something, you will move heaven and earth to accomplish the outcomes that are intended. If you're interested in something, oh, if they happen, great. And if not, don't worry, we have a litany of excuses of why we haven't been successful. When we think about interest and commitment for those who are experiencing houselessness in any way, shape, or form, from couch surfing through to shelter use, through to unsheltered use, to living in vehicles, etc., I always start to think about how polite we are when we're interested in something. If we are having community conversations where the end result is we agree to disagree, I would argue that's cowardice in the face of the challenges that we're up against. That we need to resolve some of those differences so that we actually have a united front in achieving our mission. And that mission, I would hope, also has shared values and beliefs and principles that guide the work that we're doing. But I also respect that in many instances, we have organizations or communities that say, we're all for ending homelessness, except when we're not. Except when I'm more interested in keeping the lights on in my organization and making sure my staff still have jobs. More interested sometimes in playing nice with politicians than pushing back on the right thing to do. And yes, there are times to win battles, and yes, there are times to win wars. But I really think the level of conflict that we're experiencing relative to our work calls us to a place where politeness probably isn't going to work. That doesn't mean we have to be rude, but we actually have to lead with what it is, the outcomes we want to see. That we have to make sure that we're not being passive. There is nobody who's going to drop in and save what's happening in your community. Right? It really has to come from within, and interest is convenient. But if we look at commitment, it's costly, not just financially, but commitment comes at a cost of perseverance, of the cost of innovation, right, which often means that you'll have a target on you for a while. We agree that what was working was broken, but we don't agree with what you're trying to do to move forward. A mayor recently said to me, there's only two things my constituents hate: potholes and road repair.
Sounds right.
So we're in this space where people are like totally opposed to homelessness, and yet every time you come forward with, well, so this is what we can do, they're like, yeah, no, not that. No, not that. Commitment is courageous. And that notion of courage, something that we really try to galvanize within ourselves to remain hopeful when facing headwinds, and hope not as a dream, but as a strategy. And so it's gut check time. Leadership is not defined in times that are easy. That's right. Leadership is defined when times are hard. And I will say that many an organization that I work with throughout Canada and the United States and other parts of the world is that when the going gets tough, many people that were in positions of leadership retreat to positions of management. So rather than boldly trying to transform systems to achieve justice, people retreat to, I'll put on my blinders and nose to the grindstone. I'll just do the thing that I can do really well and hope that no one gets into my business. The mission-driven leadership should make you feel uncomfortable. And it should be uncomfortable for others. Because it challenges us to keep figuring out how to persevere as opposed to reinforcing how to give up. It requires moral conviction and operational conviction. That mission-driven leadership means that we got to know when we can make lemonade out of the lemons. And sometimes take one thing that sounds completely detrimental to the work that we do and turn it into a positive, as you'll hear from some of the panelists today. To stay on course when political headwinds are strong. And I think most of us have experienced a turnover in council or provincial territorial leadership or even federal leadership and the impact that can have on our work. But if we lose the mission, we lose the movement. The movement to make homelessness rare, and if it does occur, brief, and if it does occur, only happening one time. So the big ask that I have of you is, are you still committed? The reason why you do this work may have changed from when you first got into the work. But what's the reason why you've stayed here? Because honestly, and I'm going to say with all due respect, which means I'm going to say something completely disrespectful.
Right.
With all due respect, you're freaks. The rest of society has decided to run away from the fire, and you've decided to run into the fire. And it's not like a little campfire anymore. It's an inferno. And some of you have been at this for the long part of a while, as they say. Which means that I suspect there are going to be times when you are tired. When you're worn out. One of the things I've experienced a lot in my travels is more and more people in organizations experiencing moral injury. Which, for anybody unfamiliar with that, knowing what the right thing is to do, but being unable to do the right thing, usually because of resources or policy. Are you committed? When local councils are trying to look at their legal mechanisms to force people either to leave town, to use shelter sometimes when there isn't even sufficient shelter capacity. Are you committed when that social media post regarding you, your organization, or your community, and how big of a failure you are in homelessness has really got legs, and now even people closest to you have seen it and are asking you questions around, Are you all as corrupt as they say you are? Which is probably a good time for another question. How many of you are getting rich off homelessness? So it's hard. I mean, really, 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 really hard. More times in the last few years have I had moments of heartbreak than the other decades that I've been at this. And that heartbreak is really driven by, it's not a lack of knowing what the answer is, it's the lack of political will and resources to execute on what works. I increasingly find that people who are experiencing homelessness are being blamed for their homelessness at the same time that we don't blame students when they're in overcrowded classrooms. And we don't blame their parents for breeding too much in one geographic area where they're going to put demands on the school. We don't blame those young families for moving into the neighborhood, even though they used to live elsewhere, because they like the schools and the resources there. We don't blame the patient when the ER times are sucking. And yet we blame people who are without housing for not having housing. So today I hope that you know you are seen, that you are respected, that this movement dies without you. Now there are, as I said, movements that are afoot that is going to make the path even more painful. So if you want to really understand some of what's going on in the United States, I'm going to give you some quick primers. One, if you haven't read the section on homelessness in Project 2025, it is readily available and they are following that blueprint more or less right now. There's a large entity called the Cicero Institute that has essentially written the playbook for how to criminalize homelessness at a local level. There's the likes of PragerU, which is actually not a university, that is spouting forth, I'll say, their own theories and objectives relative to homelessness that are not grounded in evidence or fact. And yet the consumption of those media are huge, and the consumption of the Cicero work, in particular at a state and local level, is disheartening. So today, you are going to hear from some pretty amazing people. I have the great honor of saying that these are folks that keep my direction going when I am doing work in the United States and thinking is this still worth it? Do I actually want to come and visit you all anymore?
You don't have a choice, really.
Many of them have become the sort of people that invite you over to their house for dinner. And some of them can cook.
Not me. Not me.
So I want to tell you a little bit about each one, and then we're going to kick off into what they're doing. So Tamara Kohler is right here. You can clap for them all at the end because you're going to hear impressive stuff. So Tamara used to run all homeless programs for the state of Utah, and then was in Seattle, and now for the past many years now has been running the show in San Diego. A absolutely dynamic leader relative at creating a space of inclusion for nonprofits to be seen and accepted, puts on a phenomenal conference every December. It's San Diego focused, but now we're getting more and more people coming from all over because it's a really good conference and it gives you a chance to see. But does us against a backdrop where San Diego made it homeless, or made sleeping outdoors essentially homeless in the downtown, and they have parking lots full of tents. That's not exactly what everything she's going to talk about, just giving you some context. Henzie Strubank, who is self-proclaimed, goes by Balance of State Barbie. She is a fearless, emerging leader in this space. And what you might not think of when you hear rural Kentucky is innovation and persistence. And you're going to hear from Kenzie around how when you embrace mission, you can achieve great things. We're going to hear from Michelle Williams. So Michelle is a consultant in the space. We overlap in some of our work and partner in some of our work in San Diego, which is great. And I will say, when I think about like quality people that communities and organizations can really value from, as opposed to consultants that are just trying to make money and then look at your watch and tell you what time it is, Michelle is the sort of person that challenges communities and organizations to get better and better and better. She calls BS where she sees BS, but does it in a way that makes you think that you were calling your own BS out, which is great. Zach Brown. Zach Brown is not the Zach Brown of the Zach Brown Band, and he hates those jokes, so don't make any of those jokes. But Zach Brown leads the West Virginia Coalition to End Homelessness, so rural West Virginia. One of the great things about Zach is that he's a fearless leader in the space of putting forth a manifesto, what he wants to achieve and how he's going to achieve it, and is often sought for rural insights on homelessness. The other great thing about Zach is that he sometimes moonlights with OrgCode on the side and helps us out. He also, don't tell him I said this, but he's actually a really amazing human being. Then there's Sean Witten. Sean, first the joke. If you ever were wondering, what does a really good smelling man smell like at a conference? Sean's the sort of guy where I want him to hug me just so some of it rubs off. Dynamic, motivational, charismatic. And Sean has really, after having a very distinguished ride leading a large multinational organization that was focused on rapid change, has really leaned into what does lived experience leadership look like? And what does it look like when we create spaces for people with lived experience to lead, not just participate? And then we have Chris Freed, who we all sang happy birthday to. I would say quite well.
Yes.
For most of us who haven't probably sang that en français in a long time. Chris is working with Sean on their Leap Forward, which is the lived experience leadership. But Chris is also one of those, I'll just say like bull in a china shop innovators.
Yes.
What's the idea? Is it going to work? And then I don't care what any of you think, I will just get this to the finish line. And you're going to hear a bunch of interesting stuff that Chris does in that regard. And I also refer to Chris and her family as my West Coast family. So, San Diego, Kentucky, all points USA, but lives in the DC area, West Virginia, we'll say Northern California, but a bit of a nomad these days.
That's right.
And Chris, Los Angeles. My friends, please put a hand together for our lovely American friends.
Well, good morning. As Ian said, I'm from San Diego, so I'm still asleep, y'all. I'm still looking for the sunshine and the, 80-degree weather. Actually, that's a little warm in San Diego. Really, truly honored to be with you today. I think one of the hardest things I ever do in this work is have the fortune or misfortune of following Ian on anything. So I am incredibly honored. As Ian said, we have been dear friends in this work and challenged in so many ways to do this work. And a little bit about San Diego. How many of you have been to San Diego?
Oh, wow.
Well, yeah. How many of you? Well, don't come now. I mean, it is the States. But when things get better, it's a great place to be, right? But just for anyone who hasn't been to San Diego, and you don't need a geography lesson, but we are literally at the very corner of the United States, the southwest corner. So we are the end of the electric line, the water line, the immigration and challenges. We are a large active duty. We're the largest active military in the nation, in the U.S. But we also are, as an organization, a true nonprofit, so I'm not government, although I've spent plenty of time, have a little pension, so, know how those work. But as the Continuum of Care lead, I have the opportunity to lead one of the largest continuums of care in the nation. San Diego is also the entire region, so 18 jurisdictions, about 3.3 million people, and on any given night, we have about 9,500 souls that are experiencing homelessness on any given night. So we have more than half of those are outside, unsheltered, many more in vehicles now, in tents and encampments, sort of the landscape of San Diego. So we also are known by some old task force language, but most people call us RTFH because that's easier. So when I reference RTFH, that's our organization. So let's be honest, and we're going to get into a really easy topic, which is focusing on the ability to influence even amongst the chaos. And this is a lovely San Diego picture of what things are today. Not the sunshine, but the challenges. And when I say the word chaos, you guys are all thinking about the U.S., aren't you? It's a space that we're all too familiar with. It is disruptive. We have constant shifts in priorities, public debates, political pressure is real in a way we have never experienced. Like all the rules are gone, and we are challenged to figure out how to do this. But even in that, we are trying to navigate it all while staying absolutely firmly true to our mission. Today, I want to talk about how influence without control helps us stay true to our purpose, even when the noise around us is loud, and how we try to do that every single day. So at RTFH, we stay grounded to our mission, which means we keep focused on housing. There is nothing that anchors our work more, and nothing matters more than housing. So what does that look like? We ensure that our funding is housing focused, regardless of the changing landscape. Not just responding to the loudest idea of the week, not the month of the meeting, but every week there's some new, more horrible thing. Creating standards of services across funders so that the care is consistent, it's equitable, and is high quality. We launch pilot programs, right? We want to be innovative, but they have to be innovative and mission aligned, not just something new. And it's not just the shiny quick fixes that all of our electeds are looking for. So we want to innovate with purpose. And funding encampment resolution efforts, because right now, visible homelessness in encampments is the failing place that we are dying, where people do not believe or trust our work if we're not focused in that space. And that focus has to be on housing people, not displacing them. So all of this happens against the backdrop, as Ian said, of constant discussion and now disruption. New shelters instead of housing. Everything's where we're going to shelter people and not really shelter them well and purpose and housing focused. More enforcement ordinances than I can possibly tell you. Sanctioned encampments, massive safe sleeping sites are happening in San Diego. Safe, parking places, but then places you can't safely even park a vehicle. Yet through all of that noise, we choose to stay anchored in a housing-focused purpose. Because being mission-driven isn't about being rigid. It's about having a North Star that lets you adapt and not drift. So I'm going to talk a little bit about a philosophy that we use, and I don't know if you guys are familiar with this, but in Really Stormy Seas, our organization looks at what we call a Stoic philosophy, which gives us a really powerful lens. And it's 3 circles. One is the circle of control, one is the circle of influence, and the other is the circle of concern. So your circle of control for each of you, whether you lead the organization or you lead your work you're doing, is your actions, your mindset, your integrity, and your mission. That is your circle of control. Your circle of influence is how you shape others. It's through leadership, relationships, and example. That is how we have to show up, and we can't be on the sidelines anymore. Our circle of influence has to be felt and understood. And then our circle of concern, and I'll just tell you, that's all the other crap. It's everything else that we're worrying about, that we carry around, that we can't directly change, the politics, the rumors, the challenges, and other people's choices. So true leadership today, right now, means that we need to focus our energy inward, mission-focused, and outward in influence, and put as little of your energy towards that upward, which is concerns. Things you can't control, the rumors, the what if, that is exhausting in our energy. So we need to stay focused in our actions today in expanding our influence. So I want you to keep that in your mindset. And when I talk about expanding your influence, that's not control, because if I had control, things had been fixed in San Diego, 60 days after I got there. Got to do it through influence, and it's got to be consistent. If there's anything I have learned over years of doing this, stay the course. may talk about it differently, may need to lean in and have different partners, but stay the course. I am known for being persistent and consistent. So at RTFH, what does it mean? When we can't control our city council debates or public narratives, we influence by showing what works. We have housing-focused encampment resolutions that actually house people. We have data that proves the impact. We have a monthly inflow and outflow that shows more people are experiencing homelessness every month than are being housed. And we have standards that clarify purpose. That is influence in action every day. So how do we anchor this leadership in the chaos? It's important that you're anchored in your purpose and persistence. There's nothing more important right now than you and your teams and your community understand your purpose and you're persistent in that way. Mission-focused leadership doesn't mean we refuse to evolve. It means that we are willing to reimagine and redesign with the same lens of purpose. It's sort of where those soft leadership skills are going to come in and be really important. It's the kind that blends courage, compassion, conviction, and is deeply needed today. It's the leaders that you think of Booker T. Washington, Gandhi, Martin Luther King, Mother Teresa, or the Dalai Lama. They were not loud. They didn't dominate through control. They influenced through character. Because we are at a place in the U.S., and I don't know if this is happening here, where we are becoming significantly distrusted. We're not only blamed for it, we are literally not trusted in this space. So it's important that we show up in a way that's influential. So soft leaders have these kind of skills: character, charisma, conscience, conviction, courage, communication, compassion, commitment, consistency, and consideration. We call the 11 C's. Now, you don't have to have all of them. I mean, I think Ian's the only one that's got all of those. But, if you've got a good handful, you've got something you can work with. Each of these leaders that I talked about made a difference because they were mission-focused and people-focused, and that defines our work, right? Even in the world when they were in turmoil. So how do we do it? How, especially in your work, do you put this together? I'm going to give you some easy examples I teach to my teams and in community, which is really important because you're going to get lost in the noise if you don't stay focused. So one, model the behavior you want to see. We still can control these things. To change culture, people have to embody the change, which means if you want to be positive and collaborative, then be positive and collaborative. In every meeting, in every conversation, influence starts with authenticity. And my friends will tell you I lead with that all the time. Focus on building meaningful relationships. Influence is relational. It's not positional. It isn't just someone's at this level, I think that's who I'm working with. It's a relational space. People want to be respected, heard, and valued. Don't we all? And if I feel that, I can work with you. I can have a conversation, even when people seem to think we don't have anything in common. If I'm willing to first listen and respect what they're saying, I have a lot more going for me. Trust isn't granted by title, it's earned by connection. It's not my title, it's the connections I make. Act indirectly and strategically, and this is critical today in the work we're doing in the U.S., and this is what it looks like. Sometimes being influential needs to be subtle. It means that I work with trusted partners, and I champion other ideas, and I create allies, right? At RTFA, some of our most successful pilots were the things that we helped align to because we built a coalition, and not because we sought the credit or control. And I can tell you that's one of the hard things. Giving up control for the better good is what leadership has to look like today. And then you need to strengthen your internal world, right? You can't lead well if you're reactive. I'm just going to repeat that. We don't lead well when we're reactive. As Ian said, we're the ones that are running into the fire, but I always say to my team, make sure you know there are people in that burning house, right? Be intentional. So as you think about it, you can't always control what happens to us, but we can control how we react. That, when we are able to accept what we can't change, we free up so much more energy to change what we can, right? Use it to strengthen your internal world. And then understand the situation deeply. Before reacting, pause. We are so reactionary to little bits of information and knowledge, we don't even know if it's true. And we're running around saying, especially in the U.S., like the sky is falling all the time. But what is really happening? What is in the news? So do your homework. Pause for a minute and ask these questions. What is within my control? What can I influence? And then, What must I simply accept? Sit in that for a minute. At RTFH, we use this exact approach to navigate some of the toughest policy debates and public expectations. It is something I have the opportunity to present often. I have 18 jurisdictions. We have a very large and very active voice against homelessness. And so often, people will ask questions, and I pause for a minute before I respond, because I want to make sure that I'm really intentional and not reactionary. And it has been a treasured trick of how to engage with folks. So how do you do this, and how do you bring it to life? So I call this RTFH in action, and we'll give you this ground of how you do it in your real work, right? So encampment resolutions. Lots of complaints about people in encampments. While most of the efforts have been focused on removal, for us, it's been housing from encampments that we focused on. We didn't just clear spaces, we created outcomes. That's influence. Showing what works through results. Clear standards across funders. You would think like that kind of work right now is not critical. It's critical to have the standards in your work. When the state reached out and said local and regional plans were required to unlock funding, we wrote a clear shared standard so partners could align on their why and then what we funded. So then it wasn't chasing the shiny objects, because we aligned to the purpose and the why and showed how that worked. That created clarity and accountability. And then finally, when you're mission aligned, you're innovative. So we test new ideas, but not every shiny idea is a good idea, right? So it's important to remember, choose your pilots that fit your mission, measure the change, and prove that focus outlasts the frenzy. And if you will do that, eventually their frenzy ends and your focused approach carries to outcomes. And through all of that, we drive towards one thing. It's important to have the data and the outcomes, because influence without evidence is just an opinion. Data shouldn't drive everything we do, but it better back up everything you do, because it's about people and the work that we do. But if we can't prove it, it's as if it didn't happen in this space. So we have the proof that housing-focused programs work. We have the proof it changes lives. You need to turn those new opportunities into alignment of what we know works. And in closing, I'll just add these couple things. So as you face the new challenges, louder debates, and deeper uncertainty and shifting expectations, remember these couple things. You may not control the storm, but you do steer your ship. Stay anchored in purpose. Expand your circle of influence. Use those soft leadership skills and make them loud in how you employ them. And let your example, your persistence, your integrity, and your compassion ripple outwards. There are still people that we can have impact on. That's how we influence among the chaos. That's how we stay true to mission. And that's how we'll make lasting change. Thank you.
Good morning. Can you all hear me okay? Sorry for saying y'all first thing. So I'm Kinsey. I'm from Kentucky, and as Ian said, you don't typically think about innovation coming from a very red, very rural state. So I'm really, really grateful to have the opportunity to share with you our street outreach story in the state of Kentucky. How many rural providers are in the room? Who's representing rural communities? Okay, do you all believe that you should have nice stuff too? Do you? Because I do. I believe that you do, and I definitely believe that we in Kentucky did. So this story has been kind of 10 years in process, really. A lot of it heavily influenced of the great work that West Virginia does. I have been in Ian and Zach's life now for about 10 years, and so I have heavily leaned on them with all of my crazy ideas to see what we could do. How could we have nice stuff too in Kentucky? Because certainly if West Virginia can figure stuff out, like we should be able to. Yeah.
See, I was gonna make fun of Kentucky, and then you said the nice thing.
Yeah, well.
Now I'm back. We're back on. Yeah.
Okay. So before I get into it, let me just level set a little bit about Kentucky and about my experiences in the field. So I come from direct service. I operated large statewide permanent supportive housing programs. I actually got into this field by way of working in a domestic violence shelter, learned immediately that I hated that and that everybody deserves housing, and really got into working with chronic homelessness early in my career. So I made the switch to the dark side of system level planning and state government about 7 years ago. And when I came over and left direct service, it was a difficult decision, but I felt so responsible for creating a system that I believed I should have had when we were starting to do coordinated entry or coordinated access in our country, when we were trying to do housing first with zero training, and people's lives were at risk. I wanted to give our COC, our Continuum of Care partners, the system that I wish that I had. And that is the only reason I went to state government, guys, because, it's rough out there sometimes. And I know that I don't look like a bureaucrat. I can be from time to time. I do like to follow rules, particularly if I made the rule. So when I came over to state government, so I'll say with our Continuum of Care system in the country, whereas Tamara comes from a true nonprofit, I'm embedded in state government, which has good things and bad things. State government typically is not the place where innovation and good ideas go to live. It's where it dies. I'm really grateful that I've got amazing leadership in my organization. We are the state housing finance agency, so we do all sorts of things. Basically anything in the state that is around housing and homelessness is funneled through my organization. We're about 350 people. My department that I run is homeless services, and you can imagine, it's a small group. We're about 25 people now. When I came on, I had 5 people. I had 5, so I've grown it. I've done some pretty cool stuff. I've been able to get trust of my leadership to really be a hands-on system lead and not just grant writers or compliance staff. So when I joined, I had a whole bunch of ideas already of what I wanted to do, backed from my own experiences and my peers that are still in the field. So here's a map of Kentucky. I am responsible for 118 counties. There are 120 counties in the state of Kentucky. So we do our annual point-in-time count. In 2019, pivotal year, this is the year I joined my organization with all my big obnoxious ideas and the many no's I got in the very beginning. Our PIT count showed that we had 66 counties that did not report unsheltered homelessness. And that's a lie. We know. We already know that the point-in-time count is not the best metric to use, but it's what we have. That's what we use in the states for our COC funding. But this 66 counties showing zero homelessness, zero unsheltered homelessness, is what drove my department in their funding decision-making for years. For years. So in 2018, we had one street outreach program that we funded. It was for $1,000. $1,000, and guess what? It was returned in full. Nobody used it. Nobody used it. And so, because we had these numbers, we had these counties saying, oh, we don't have any unsheltered homelessness. But then again, we only invested $1,000 into sending people outside to find people. In Kentucky, much like what Zach will talk about with West Virginia, Appalachia is very mountainous. We've got parts of our state, so does he, where we have no internet connectivity, physical addresses, land has been gifted down from generation to generation. We have so many geographical barriers that trying to rely on a volunteer base one night a year to go and try and find people is absolutely insane. And so with this $1,000 that was returned, I was like, thank God that happened, because then I could start, weaseling in my grand plan of figuring out how do we build the capacity of this homeless response system. We have a horrible shelter system in Kentucky. We do not have nearly enough shelter. Also, we have not enough housing, which I know you all have that as well. But people are dying outside. And the staff that I inherited, who I love, and many of them are still with me, were never direct service providers. So when I would get up and speak and say, we've got to do something, people are dying outside, like I was accused of being dramatic. Do you all think I'm dramatic? No. I mean, I am, but not about this. People are dying outside, and that's not okay. And we're not, I just cannot allow bureaucracy or silly rules that make no sense, that are just there to be there, to get in my way. So I really view my job as a leader of my team and as our state effort of cutting through all of the BS and the red tape and getting to the yes as quickly as possible. I am, like Tamara, I am also very persistent and obnoxiously consistent. So I just don't take no very well. So Ian has always told me, as I've been coming up in my career, that I am a person who thinks like 5 years in advance. Like I'm not ever satisfied with what we're doing right now. I want to be thinking bigger, bigger, bigger. And what if something awesome happened? What would we do? And I don't think we do that enough in our field. That's right. Because we are reactionary and we're stuck in crisis management mode. I like to put my head in the clouds and think a little bit further down the road of what that looks like. So during the pandemic, what a gift. We had amazing funding nationally that was put into our system through the pandemic. And I watched other states fail with that because they did not know what to do. And a lot of the pandemic-related funding came to states who are not system thinkers, right? We're checking boxes, we're doing paperwork, that's what we're doing. We're not paying rents, we don't know how to keep up. They're not thinking big. But because of my experiences in the field and my anger over this $1,000 that was returned, I said, no, we're not doing that. We need to use this opportunity to have one time only like money where we can actually build up our system. We can actually have street outreach. Like what a concept, guys, we can do it. And in our state, we have a match burden that is so bad for the existing regular street outreach type of funding. This pandemic level of funding it had no match attached to it. So I had to work hard to get my providers on board, like ask them to do big, bold things without having to pay match too. So it's like, I'd be like, here's $3 million. Go hire people and go outside. Like we can do this. I had to really shift the culture within my own team. I mentioned I had a lot of grant writers. I brought in a lot of new people from the field who had their experiences too, right, to help form the system that we needed. And I had to do a lot of massaging of leadership, right? I needed to get my leadership on board. We worked really hard to develop a very strong culture, which I feel so good about, not only internally, but our entire system. All of my friends up here have supported us for years, and I'm so grateful for that. And so we really focus on having system preparedness from a monetary standing, but also like system support. So we couldn't do what we do without all my friends up here. They support us. And as a leader, you need your squad to support you through that as well. And that's who all these amazing people are. And so what we did is we operate in 15 regions. We were able to do 15 regional street outreach teams. Then 2 years later, there's another federal funding opportunity where we were able to get a ton of money to do street outreach. And it wasn't just about the money, it was also about investing in quality experts to help us get to where we go. We can fund things and it can be returned. But to have this amazing group of people, particularly Ian and all of his work around outreach, to really train to those results that we wanted, it was key. And so I would end with, you can fund things. But if you do not build culture, if you do not lead with your own why, if you are not persistent, and if you do not approach things as a human to all the other humans you're working with, you're going to fail. Money does not solve everything, and we know that. I'm proud of the work that we've done in Kentucky. Couldn't have done it without Ian. And I would just leave you all with, it's important to lead with your vision, to invest in that training, quality training that you trust, that you wish you had. Develop your rapport with your communities, your leadership. Create a culture of buy-in where people get your why and they want to be on board. Allocate with strategy if you're overfunding. Don't allocate just to allocate. Think it through and establish your system supports. Thank you.
Hi everyone, how are you? I don't know any words of French, so I won't be doing that right now. Okay, all right. I just want to say how truly grateful I am to be here, to Ian for putting us in front of you today, and to have the opportunity to be here in your country. Specifically so I can do this. I'd like to say some words that have been banned in the U.S. since January 2025. Are you ready? I should have pulled up the whole list, but I'm just going to start with the three that I don't feel like I've said together, which is diversity, equity, and inclusion. Wow. It is. Okay, wait.
Just go ahead.
Okay, just keep going. Okay. Oh, there you go. Okay. Oh, shoot. Now I'm lost. Okay. There we go. All right. So thank you for that. I might just take a break as we're going through and say it again. And then if you see me in the hallway, I might have some more words that I just shout out at you because I just feel so free, and like you all won't call the authorities so that they'll actually let me come back in when I try to go home. Okay. As you know, in the U.S., right, all of the things that have happened to us, right, we've had truly a reversal of course on things like diversity, equity, and inclusion. And that is what I've spent the last probably 2 years, like starting in the pandemic, but when things became really, like we all took life seriously at that point, working on. And so having to rethink the entirety of what we do, right, and what that means. And to shift our language. So when I've done presentations in the US, I now use the terms fairness, othering, and belonging, right? Because again, those words, in my opinion, mean the same thing, and there's absolutely no executive order that can change my values. So, it doesn't matter what words I use. So, I, for the first time in several months, get to talk to you about equity, right? And so, I know you all are feeling some of the same pressures, right, that exist in our entire world at this point. But we have to remember our why, right? And ending homelessness requires that we have a focus on equity, right? Because equity is about figuring out how we get everyone to the goal. And the goal is that everyone has safe, appropriate, affordable housing, right? It doesn't matter who they are, what they look like, who they choose to love. It doesn't matter, right? If our value is that everyone has a right to housing, then everyone has a right to housing. It just may take different strategies to overcome the systems of discrimination that have caused some folks, including people in my life, in my history, to not have access to that housing. So we want to make sure that we're still starting with the data, right? So in the US, we know that homelessness has reached an all-time peak, right, at over 770,000 Americans experiencing homelessness in 2024. While Black Americans represent 13% of our total general population, we are in fact 37% of people experiencing homelessness. And for Native Americans in our country, we're at the highest unsheltered rate ever of 50%. 1 of every 2 Native American persons experiences homelessness. You don't have that many different numbers here in Canada, right? Your unsheltered homeless numbers are up 300% since 2018. For Indigenous peoples, who are 5% of the population, yet represent 28 to 34% of shelter users. So we're sharing a similar reality, and it means that's why, if we believe that everyone deserves access to housing, why we have to continue to focus on how we're going to get everybody to that goal, right? And that's about fairness. Fairness means we can all get there, right? But equity means that we're going to use different strategies to accomplish that. So DEI, whew, geez, that feels so good. I didn't even know I was going to have this emotional reaction. So DEI is about effectiveness, right? And both the National Alliance to End Homelessness in the US and the Canadian Alliance to End Homelessness here in Canada have already shown us that this is not about politics, right? This is about people. And our data demands that we work toward effective outcomes for everyone. So if we're working to end homelessness by ignoring those who are most affected, we're just managing an unjust system. And that's what we can no longer have. Okay. I'm like, am I doing this right? Yeah, okay. All right. So what I think about and what I talk with communities about is about how we think about the strengths that we have, right? You've heard about not getting lost, not getting distracted by the shiny objects, but recognizing the strength that we bring. When we started our journey of kind of reframing, right? It started with just talk about our success and don't talk to people just at a federal level. Don't give people federal level statistics, right? Give them their local statistics, right? In my community, how many people are finding themselves coming into homelessness and how many people are exiting, right? And what are the strategies that we're seeing that work? And what are the barriers, right? No one's gonna disagree that there aren't lots of things standing in the way, but we all have the same outcome. And that's what I try to believe about the people who may be working against us is that the thing that we all want is that we don't have people who are living on the street. We have that same goal, right? And if we can start there, right, we can begin to overcome people. Everyone's told you about like my leadership strategy about people who I don't particularly agree with or like, right? It's to sit next to them, right? Because if you sit next to someone and I smile, I can be very charming, then they're going to have to engage with me, right? And that's all I want. I don't have to go to your house for dinner. I don't have to do all that stuff, but I have to engage you on the things that we have in common. So thinking about how you bring in your local statistics, right? That's what impacts people who are making decisions locally, is what is happening to the people that they know and love in your community. Making sure that we're pointing out all of the things, right? We have been a systems, in the US at least, who has taken on trying to solve every problem. We're not equipped to do that. So who do we need? And not being afraid to have partnerships or to say, healthcare system, I need you, right, to do the thing that you're supposed to do, because then I can do the thing that I'm supposed to do. I think I'm a little off track, but it's okay. I don't mind. I don't mind. It's cool. I think we knew this was going to happen. So I want to talk to you about your staff too, right? I want to make sure that in times when things get hard, when people start talking about the people who they think are experiencing homelessness or they think are causing all these problems, right? It's important to remember that our staff are representative of those people, right? And to have psychological safety for them. I can tell you firsthand that when these things are being said, when they're being talked about, right? It's more than just hearing it for me, right? It's extremely personal because the people they're talking about are me. Mm-hmm. And so we have to remember that, right? That we are the people. There's nothing that separates us from any person who's experiencing homelessness, not a single thing. Everything that they're experiencing, you could be experiencing too, right? Everything that you're experiencing, they could be experiencing too. And it's important to remember that there's no separation between people, right? We are humans. But make sure that for your staff, you're providing an opportunity for them to talk, right? For them to share their feelings, for them to feel supported in your workplace. When people say things that are inappropriate, right? Okay, I'm not gonna swear. Inappropriate in meetings, challenge that, right? Challenge that. See, we're not gonna have that type of conversation. That's not going to move us forward, right? And check in with those staff to make sure they're okay, because that stuff hits hard. And I know we all know that. Make sure we have response protocols. So knowing when a crisis happens, who's going to respond, right? Who's the right person to respond? Plan that ahead of time, right? Nobody has to come at us by surprise. I'll just let you know, right? We all know the things that will come. And that means we can plan for that occurrence right now. We can decide who's going to respond. We can talk about the scenarios and have templates for what we're going to do. We can have a media plan, right? To know who we are talking to. When something happens, who are our allies, right, in the media that we can turn to, that we can share correct information with. And make sure your board is fully supportive. If you have people, look, a board is voluntary service, okay? At least in the US, right? It's not, is it here too? Okay, thank you. Woo, good. Because if they were paying, I was coming here. Okay, so make sure that your board, right? If you got term limits on your board, exercise them, right? Right? It's important that your entire organization, your staff, the people that you're serving, know that the people who are responsible have their backs. So please make sure. And think about how you invest in leadership development, right? I'm in the US, we have I don't know the right word. We have a significant gap, in my opinion, in leadership in this field particularly, right? We have not been a field that's been able to retain a lot of staff as they come in for the long term. And so we have this gap, right, that exists between the people who are in leadership right now and the people who are on the front lines. And in the middle, it's really hard to find people, right, who stay. And so we have to rethink all of our practices, and we have to develop leadership opportunities for staff, and including your staff who are representative of the overrepresented populations in your community. So please make sure that you're thinking about leadership development and what it takes to help people really, truly embrace this work and want to stay, right? There was something in all of us that made us want to stay, right? For me, it was like people just let me do what I wanted to do. That was great, right? And when they didn't, I found somebody else in the same field who let me do what I wanted to do. So there you go, right? And I'm not talking about just keeping them in your organization, but keeping them in the field as a whole, right? So yes, this person may move from place to place, that's fine, right? But as long as they stay in the work, right? What I hate is when people go get another job in retail or for Amazon or somewhere like that, right? Because we needed their brilliance and we needed their strength in our network. Make sure that you're prepared to have backlash, right? There's always going to be people who are working against us, right? We have to know that these things are going to come up and we have to be prepared to deal with them. We have to think about locally what happens. When we had all of this stuff start, okay, what? How many?
Two.
Two, thanks. Okay. Right. When we had all of this stuff start, I was saying to communities, stop trying to talk to state people. Go talk to your city council, right? Go talk to your county commission, right? Because those are the people, as changes happen, who will be responsible for determining what happens with the funding you are currently receiving. So get in their face, right? Make sure they know you. Make sure they know what your organization does, and they know what would happen if you don't exist, right? So get out there and talk to people locally. And remember, I think we all have the same theme really happening, is that we have to be persistent, right? And we know how to do that because we wouldn't be sitting here otherwise, right? We have to be persistent and we have to be resilient. Equity is the path forward. I think you're probably going to get these slides. So I think these are the things I just said. And then just in closing, just remember that this is the work, right? It is not the easy stuff. It's not when things go well. This is the actual work. And there's no path to ending homelessness that doesn't address systemic inequities that exist in both of our countries. And so equity, again, equity, is not a distraction. It is the foundation of lasting change. Thank you.
Okay. Gotta get back. Okay, I'm the guy that doesn't have slides other than this one, because that's how exhausted and lazy I am right now. So a couple things. First of all, I want to thank you guys. This has been a nice break from kind of what we're dealing with on a day-to-day basis. I'll speak for myself. Yesterday was unlike anything I've ever experienced before, really anywhere, much less a conference. So, and I think yesterday was a lot about, it showed the differences between our countries in a lot of ways that you guys still dip into honor and respect. And some of us kind of still like those old-timey, archaic sorts of things, because I think we're losing that. And that's a lot of what we've been talking about. So I think we've done a good job, and we will do a good job of kind of measuring between the doom and gloom of what we're dealing with and the hopefulness of what, quite frankly, you guys may bring to the industry as well. I'll say it again, and it's kind of redundant in terms of these guys brought it up, but I mean, this group of people, Ian included, these are folks that when things get real weird, which they have, you can really lean on and talk to and not feel as crazy as our work can make you feel right now in the United States of America. For better or for worse, I think one place where I have a little advantage over a lot of people, depending on where you are geographically in the U.S., is that I'm in a really, really red conservative state in West Virginia, and no one really liked what I was doing in the first place. So I'm not a stranger to, oh, you guys are crazy, we don't like this, who cares about homeless people, let's apply criminalization or our politics against you or our policies against you. That's been done for a really long time. So if we were paying attention as some of this stuff that we're going through now ramped up, you could kind of see it coming. You could see it culturally. You could see the little echoes before even things like Cicero put out their stuff for Project 2025 and all that jazz. So what we're going through now is that I've always sort of said that if you want to take people's rights away, start with the most vulnerable people first. Test that out on them. And I think unfortunately that's the space that we're in right now. Which if you're really a good American and like freedom and like equality, then that really flies against every sort of marketing material that America's supposed to be about in the first place. So there is that. I have always been a person, and Ian has said this in the past, that you can correct me if I'm saying it wrong, but that I've always worked either on or outside of systems. He says, yeah, that's the right thing he's called me. I don't like rules. I like politics less. I don't like being showy. I don't like being what you think a CEO should look like or do or whatever. I've always been that person. I'm not much of a rule follower. And I think early on what I told my staff, particularly my leadership staff, is like a lot of them are sort of type A rule followers. They like structure, they like expectation, they like to know that the world is ordered and not a chaotic mess. And I said, what are you guys gonna do when the rules are turned against us? Like what will you, and I challenged them to think about a time when rules may come smashing into your values. And that's, I think, where we are. And I'm trying to make myself sound like I'm really right and I knew all this was coming all along. I didn't know it was gonna be this bad, let me put it that way. But this has been the test for us, is really looking at from a mission-focused standpoint, boiling down what we do for a living and why we do it. And Ian hit on some of this, and so have some of the other presenters, but really, it's a big time of soul-searching for us. It certainly was for me. One of the things and to give you a little bit about my background, I came sort of out of a shelter background, grant writing background. But really reminding myself why I got into this in the first place. And I think that's a really good first stop on the way to when things get difficult. Stripping things down in terms of your mission and your vision and your values of why do I do this? And by and large, I've always done this, and every decision has come from the standpoint of what helps me find people, house people, and keep them housed. And when things get complicated politically or from a policy standpoint or from a staff standpoint, if you can go back and say, am I achieving those things by this decision or what I'm doing, then that, which sounds oversimplified, but sometimes we need to oversimplify what we're doing for a living. That's it. I just believe that people shouldn't die on the street, and that I have a responsibility to do something about that and a commitment to do something about it. I think that at the outset of what has happened in our country, that a lot of people went into turtle mode. Caution, let's be careful, let's not draw attention to ourselves, which was largely bullshit, because what we did for a living was always already drawing attention to itself. So I'll speak for myself and just say that I've turned the corner from that sort of mindset. I'm not really good at being quiet anyway, but we're into a Zach Brown phase where probably I'm gonna start being a lot more vociferous about a lot of stuff, because I think our issues are existential right now. And I think the only way to fight against them is to bring truth to the front. The reality of what people are experiencing, both in poverty and on the street, I think needs to be said over and over and over again, because that's the one place that we, in what we do, we get to see reality all the time, right? We get to pull that veil back and see what's really going on with people, and I think we are an important conduit of reality and truth, objective truth, for people that just don't get it and just don't understand. Should, but don't. So my hope for you guys is that you're going to be, as a country, diverse enough and positive enough to be armored against some of the stuff that's coming. Ian talked about some of the stuff already happening here. But my hope for you, just kind of real briefly, is that just the way you are and the differences in the way you are, that you don't get this sort of like wildfire of hate and bigotry and anger that we have. My hope that your culture is different enough that you can be safe from that. At any rate, the real thing I'm here to talk about is how I got into doing supportive housing and doing housing development, and kind of like everything else I've ever done at the coalition, it's sort of like by accident. So I'm not really like a genius, believe it or not. There's not a ton of geniuses in West Virginia. I'm certainly not one of them. We're a little smarter than Kentucky. We always say, thank God for Kentucky.
There it is.
Thank God for Kentucky. I have done most things by accident, so I've stolen from every person that's here. I've been stealing from Ian since nigh on the beginning, because I'm sure, like a lot of you, he kind of like articulated things that were rolling around in my head that I was too stupid to like really say, oh yeah, that's really what I believe. So stealing forever. But the coalition in West Virginia has been a storied history of like, okay, we'll do it. And that's why I called it okay, we'll do it, because that's literally been my career of like, we are the continuum of care. We cover 44 of West Virginia's 55 counties. I had come from a direct service background or direct service adjacent background. I was perfectly happy being an administrative entity and doling out money and doing monitoring, and didn't want to get back into direct service. But a little bit like Kenzie's story is like, we had an outreach grant that no one was applying for, no one would go after it, and finally a few of my staff said, we need to go after this. I said, okay. So I got a little pot of outreach money and a little pot of rapid rehousing money back then. And we started doing outreach and started doing direct service. Had no intention of doing direct service. Before you know it, we're applying also for COC funds that nobody else is going to apply for in terms of supportive housing. And we're doing supportive housing. We're doing recovery work. We're doing more outreach. We're doing more coordination, more system building. Over the years, in terms of, and we have always done a lot of supportive housing, and I mean from a scattered site standpoint. So out in the world, using mom and pop landlords, using subsidies, and housing people kind of out in the communities. There was always the idea in the back of my head that we were going to have to be think about housing development at some point. And I really dreaded it because I'd done enough in sort of a previous job. I'm real super old. I'm got one of the old fart people that's been doing this for, we're coming up on 25 years. And back in the day when we could get sort of hard cost development money from Housing and Urban Development, we did kind of transitional and supportive housing, sort of site-based. And in my case, it was adjacent to one of our shelters. But I was really not, I learned a hard lesson of housing development is not something that you kind of do on the side because it's complicated and it's stressful. And if you don't have that, it's its own competency. So fast forward to around in the midst of COVID on a whim, or probably just out of sheer desperation, or maybe boredom, I don't know. I applied for some congressionally directed funding from one of our senators who was on his way out as a senator, and got $2 million in money to do housing development. All I knew is I wanted to do units, accessible, safe units. I knew that. I didn't think I was gonna get that grant. To be honest with you, I was just like, whoa, okay, got it. So fast forward to being in a really fortunate position of being hooked up with some guys who are basically sort of development experts who are philanthropic by and large. They're called creative development partners. Believe it or not, my development team is not even in West Virginia. So one dude's in DC, and then the other two people are in Oakland, California. So they're the ones that have helped me through. They have all the expertise I don't have in development. I know what I want. But right now, and one reason I didn't do slides is I don't have anything to show you on the development front. Maybe if you still want us back next year, I'll have something to show you next year. But kind of the plan right now is one of the upsides to West Virginia's sort of like Wild West mentality is that we don't have a lot of red tape. We don't have a lot of code. We don't have a lot of barriers other than big old mountains to building affordable housing. So when I have these guys that are on either coast and they're doing development and they're talking about like years and years and years just to get to the point you can break ground, they're like, what, we can go buy 20 acres and then like really like fast track this? I'm like, yeah, we can. So that's exactly what we're doing is our first set of units is gonna be about 40 units of affordable housing that's going to be part supportive housing and part just affordable for anybody in a very rural part of West Virginia where I could get very cheap land on a very big tract of old land. So we're in the midst of that right now. Putting some thought to how that fits into our rural communities so that it's a more of a value add to the community. Also doing the kind of the PR move of eventually going to spin off a development corporation that doesn't have end homelessness in the title, just for the reasons of being a real developer from that standpoint and not already like getting the communities against us. So this is kind of a proof of concept project, and then we'll move on to hopefully putting this other places in West Virginia. Our overarching goal is to do 2,000 units of housing in 6 years. That is what I want to do. That is what I will do, one way or the other. What are you laughing at? Yeah, it's, and I don't know where the subsidy issue is going to head in the United States or in West Virginia, but I can't think about all the things that aren't going to happen or what is going to happen over the next few years. This is really commitment. So once this is up and running, and this is housing development, if you're a very impatient person, it's very difficult because it goes in sort of like dribs and drabs. Like you get a lot done and then you have to wait for a while. But part of the reason of doing this is I'm tired of kind of what we're going through now in terms of like the middleman being told what to do, how to do it, who I can house, who I can't house, what words I should say, how those should work, and how I have to be cautious. I want to, part of, I think, mission-driven leadership is deciding how you can chart your own course with your own values, with your own sense of, I don't want anybody telling me how to do this. And if we're going to enter into a world where I'm going to be told who I can house, how I can house them, and how I cannot, then if I own my own housing, then you can't really tell me what to do, period. So that's the big part of being a developer right now. So my hope is that at some point I'll come back up here and be able to really show you guys, I think, visually what we're trying to achieve, and it's going to be helpful to you. I've already had a couple conversations with people here about taking out the middleman and developing housing, and I think that one of the cool things about you guys is that my understanding is that as a country, you're having like an unprecedented commitment to funding affordable housing, and that's awesome. Yeah. And that's because I think at the end of the day, in whatever we're doing, we can have more program money, we can have more subsidies, but we just need more elasticity in our housing markets there and here. That's the only way we're going to really end homelessness at the end of the day.
Here we go. Hello. How are you? My name is Sean Witten. As Ian mentioned, I'm really excited to be here, and I'm super, super grateful for the warmth and reception that we've all received as we've been here. As everybody has mentioned, that is not something we're feeling currently. This group does. But, so much love. So much love. But just, it's been amazing, and I'm so thankful to all of you, and I'm super grateful to be here. So I'm going to talk to you today about lived experience advancement. What that looks like. I want to give you the perspective of what it looked like about 10 years ago in the US, where we kind of are now, and some of the work that Chris and I are doing to get to that next stage in that work. So as I introduced myself, Sean Witten, but I do want to share my identities with you because I think it's important for all of us in this work to feel safe enough to be able to say who we are so people understand where we're coming from. Right? So I am Black, white, and Seminole Native American. I am a gay man with lived experience of homelessness and substance use. And I bring all of those identities into the work that I've done since I was homeless, right? It's really important that we create those spaces and that we get to a place where we feel comfortable sharing that, because who we are defines how we do this work. So what I'm going to talk to you, as I mentioned, is about where we were when it came to lived experience and kind of where we are headed. So about 10 years ago, there was this widespread surface level inclusion, and some of y'all may have seen this as well, right? This was, let's ask folks with lived experience or living experience to be on advisory boards. Let's have them tell their story and share some trauma porn with everybody, right? It was, let's ask them to come to something by themselves without the support by us around what this experience was going to be like, who the people were going to be in the room, how we were going to make sure that they felt safe and comfortable enough to engage, right? We thought we were really doing something. And we quickly learned we weren't, but weren't quick to respond to making the shift, right?
The green, that's all right.
And so we learned a little bit, right? And then I would say we started drifting to a growing but uneven shift toward genuine participation. This is when we started hiring folks with lived experience, calling them peer workers or peer support, right? As if their only identity was the fact that they have a shared experience of houselessness as an employee for our organizations. We asked them to help us design services or provide feedback without actually telling them how we incorporated their feedback, right? We want all of your ideas. Okay, well, where are they? What'd you do with them, right? We weren't actually incorporating that into the work that we were doing. And it was us telling ourselves that we were actually making a difference, and we just weren't actually making a difference, right? This led to Chris and I having a conversation about a year ago, specifically on the importance of not just providing these opportunities for folks with lived experience, but if we want to change our systems and if we want to change our programs, we have to actually have lived experience folks in paid positions at a level that allows them to influence policy and systems change, right? No longer can we say your peer support, great, we love that for you. But they need to be supervisors and managers. They need to have the opportunity to become VPs, CEOs, executive directors, right? That lived experience shapes the way they feel about this sector and is the most important voice in a room when we're thinking about how to help folks who are currently experiencing homelessness. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about how Chris and I do that and what that work looks like. So we do several different things with communities, organizations, or at the state level, we're working at county levels, we're working locally. But one of the ways we do this is through community of practice, where we actually bring staff who are employed in our sector and they have lived experience to participate in a 6-month cohort where Chris and I, who have had the opportunity to not only advance in our careers, but to be able to speak about what that's been on a national level, Chris and I had to figure that out on our own. Right? And, luckily we have no problem talking, getting into rooms, asking questions, and busting down doors. But not everybody has the opportunity to do that. And so what we do during that community of practice is we share what the skills are and provide the training for folks to be able to advance their career through leadership development. And not only are we providing that, but it's built by and for people with lived experience. We also do leadership training, where we work with managers and other folks who are currently at a leadership level to help them learn how to support their staff with lived experience and to create the opportunities for them to advance in their career. I believe that if we shift our cultures of organizations to be able to support the staff with lived experience in the best way we can, we'll be able to support everybody the best way we can. We provide professional coaching with folks, right? So they have one-on-one time with us to be able to bring whatever they're experiencing or to discuss stuff we talked about in our cohort. But it really does provide a mentor or somebody that can help them think through their journey. And then we do assessments and evaluations of programs, organizations, or COCs, whatever those systems are, to take a look at their policies, practices, and culture and offer recommendations. But it's not just offering recommendations. It's, if you wanted us to do this, now we have to figure out what is our strategic plan. How are we going to put these things into action, right? We don't want a report sitting on someone's desk. We want to help people actually move that process through. I won't go into too much detail because I'll get the 2-minute sign. That's a big slide. Okay, 2-minute slide. I didn't mean to ask for it. You know? All right. So there are 6 focus areas that we do in all of our services, right? We dig into leadership, where we analyze leadership styles and provide an opportunity for folks to understand how to build authentic relationships as opposed to transactional relationships. We dig into leading with authenticity. That's how do you show up as your authentic self, and how do you provide the space for others to be their authentic self when you're supervising them. We go into the nuts and bolts of building management skills, right? How do you do supervision? How do you think more strategically about goal setting for your department? Very nuts and bolts. And then supporting self and others. This is where we talk about not only how are you supporting yourself in this work, but how are you supporting your team, and how are you supporting your supervisor, right? What is the thread that goes through all three of those things? That's also where we talk about working in your genius. How do you find that thing that is the spark of joy that you can get every day at work, and figure out how to implement that into your work in some way, shape, or form? Michelle talked about folks in the middle not staying, right? So if you're able to work in your genius at some point throughout your day, you're more likely to stay because you have that thing to offer. We talk about systems of care. What is the system we're working in? How are we connecting with other systems, right? And then thriving organizations. Where does your role fit in your organization, and how do you make sure you're connected to other departments to be able to support each other towards the mission of your organization? So all of that to say, I have the most amazing partner in the entire world. I'm so glad it's her birthday. Happy birthday.
Thank you.
And what I would say and what I'd like you to leave with is, it's no longer okay to just have people with lived experience joining a board or a committee. We've got to make the space for folks to be hired, for folks to be elevated, and for folks to have the opportunity to lead these systems in order for them to change even more.
You know, the good news is I am between you and lunch. And this whole crew left me 3.3 seconds. So, I don't. All right. I don't even know what the heck to talk about in the 3 minutes I have, because I had like 7 minutes worth of slides. One thing I do want to mention is tomorrow we have a full presentation on Leap Forward. So if you're around tomorrow, come and see us, and we'd love to have you. In terms of why I was here to talk today, the good news is now you have to invite me back next year, because my presentation is absolutely not going to happen. I wanted to just quickly say, and I swear I talk really, really fast. I'm from Los Angeles. Some think I'm from New York, but I also know people have their ear thing in. So let me try to slow it down a little bit. Our current sphere, everyone has talked to you about what's happening in the United States right now. Housing First is under attack. Permanent housing funding is on the outs. Enforcement is being prioritized. We're seeing homelessness spike, which means more seniors, more families, more vulnerable individuals are without a place to live. Landlords are no longer willing to participate in the programs that we were once able to convince them to participate in. And so we've got to think about that a little bit different. Stabilization is an afterthought. We are not funding it appropriately to ensure that people are getting the services, which by virtue would then keep landlords probably more engaged. So we've got to start thinking about that function individually. But the one thing I can certainly say is that staff are working harder than ever. Communities are banding together, and solutions are still being prioritized. And with that, I'm not going to be able to get into a lot, but I just want to briefly talk about two things. One, what we call in the United States is master leasing, definitely not a new concept. You all call it here, based on what my good friend Ian shared, head leasing, which is basically where somebody else is doing the lease, we sublease then to our clients. In the United States, what we determined as we were losing a lot of our landlords is that we need to do something a little bit differently here. We are not being able to secure enough units fast enough to make an impact to quiet the people in our communities that are pushing up against our system so hard because they're frustrated with the visibility of homelessness outside. So what we did in Los Angeles was we created government-backed master leasing where our county and our city came in. They're the ones that are holding the leases and then allowing the nonprofits to do what the nonprofits do best, which is to come in and provide the services to the people that are living in the building. So they don't have to be the ones, the nonprofits don't have to be the ones doing the direct master leasing themselves or head leasing themselves. Government is doing that and then allowing our nonprofits to do the things that they do best. Two main key points to that. One, we've been able to negotiate prices down 20% below fair market rent in doing that, and our lease agreements are 5 years. I've got all kinds of information to talk about how we're able to fund that on the long term and keep that going and above water. But I think the most important thing is that nonprofits, again, get to do what they do great, and government gets to be held accountable for what they should be doing. In Los Angeles last year, which was our first year, we brought on 772 units of leases for people that were experiencing homelessness. And why is that important? Because when you say you want to do housing first, meaning going to an encampments and pulling people from encampments and offering them housing, if they say yes, they can move in that day. We were able to do that for 772 people last year. And that's amazing. Thank you. Which really supported our encampment to home. Tamara talked about that. I have the pleasure of being able to work with Tamara day in and day out in San Diego and working on things like encampment to home, which truly is about taking people from encampments, taking them to units, saying, do you want to move into this unit? Great, this is your permanent housing, and avoiding shelter altogether. What we have found is that when we do that, people do not say no. Our two largest encampments so far in San Diego, and we've only been doing this for about 9 months, 6 or 9 months. Our first encampment was in the city of Oceanside. There were 72 people living in an encampment in 8 weeks, in an entrenched encampment. 10 years they had been living in this site. We were able to move 64 of the 72 into permanent housing in 8.5 weeks, and none of them went into shelter. So I think that's really important, is refocusing the shelter piece wherever you possibly can by engaging in your landlord community to ensure that there's a safe and affordable place for people to move into. The last one that I want to talk about is shared housing, because I think this is so important, not just in the United States, but also in every place that we look. Oftentimes in our work, we say people do not want to do shared housing. I would ask everyone in this room, I have to do this, I'm sorry, I know I'm holding you up from lunch. How many of you all have never lived in shared housing? Oh my God, Canadians get it. Holy shit. I ask this question in the United States all the time. There's always at least one person in the room that I was almost going to say rocket genius in the room that raises their hand. The truth is we were all born, which means we all lived in a family of some sort. Shared housing has to be part of our conversation. When we assume that our people do not want to live in shared housing, stop asking, do you want shared housing? Start asking, if you were to find a 2-bedroom apartment, is there someone that you could find that you want to live with? I promise you the answer will be yes. We have to do this. It is a more affordable solution, not just in the United States, because your cost of housing is expensive too. And we can use way more units in the community, although you will never hear me say that we should not be building. We 100% should be building. But we have to use the spaces that we currently have, and we have to think about using them differently. And with that, I am done.
Ooh. Oh my God. Wow, sister.
All right. So, there won't be time for questions other than one of you coming up. But 2 things I want to say. One, Leadership Academy on Ending Homelessness. Everybody up here has gone through the Leadership Academy or participated in the Leadership Academy. If you have any questions about that, which we're doing with the Canadian Alliance to End Homelessness, in end of March, first part of April in Canmore. There's also more information at the Org Code booth for sure, and a big banner up at the CEH booth if you want to get more information on that. The second thing is, there's a videographer here, a guy by the name of Zach with Spacebound Productions. He's going to be outside these doors and kind of by the wood stairs. If you are interested in answering 2 questions, why do you do this? And what does ending homelessness look like to you? We want to put together an advocacy tool that the Canadian Alliance and others can use to showcase where the sector is at in their thoughts, not just the talking heads that usually get the time and the space and the energy. So if you're interested in answering those questions, do that. Otherwise, we'll go mic muted, go enjoy lunch, chat with everybody up here. Thank you so much.
Do you have one in?